What's up, YouTube? In today's video, we're going to be talking about how after years of slowly building up a trio of trusted Sigma prime lenses, the 16mm, the 30mm, and the 56mm f1.4, I've decided to sell all three to fund just one lens, the new Sigma 17 to 40mm f1.8 art lens. Before we dive in, I just want to make a quick note that I bought all of the lenses that I'll be talking about today with my own money. No one's paying me to say anything in this video, and my thoughts and opinions are my own. If you like grounded and honest discussions about gear, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. But first, let's rewind a bit. I bought the Sigma 30mm f1.4 in 2022 for my Sony a6400, and it was a big deal for me. It was my first serious autofocus prime lens. Before that, I had the basic Sony kit lens that originally came with my old Sony Nex3N, and the Sigma 19mm f2.8, which I bought many years ago thinking that I'd focus on landscape and architectural photography. That lens is long gone now. I also used to shoot with a pair of vintage Minolta 50mm manual focus primes, the MC f1.4 and the MD f1.7, but the Sigma 30mm was the first lens that I felt like I could take anywhere and use for anything. It was honestly pretty inseparable from my camera for a long time. The 30mm focal length on APS-C, which is about a 45mm full-frame equivalent, is one of my favorite focal lengths for everyday shooting. I used it for street photography, product shots, and just documenting my life, and having a wide aperture prime that could reliably autofocus felt like a huge step forward, especially after coming from years of using manual-only glass for most of my photography. It also pushed me into low-light photography for the first time. I started shooting more indoors, more at night, more when the light wasn't ideal. It really opened up a whole new side of photography for me. With all that said, the lens wasn't perfect. While it's plenty sharp, it suffers from pretty pronounced chromatic aberration. Realistically, anything below f4 or f5.6. And since I've done a lot of product photography without much supplemental lighting for most of my shooting life, this was a little frustrating. After the 30mm, the Sigma 16mm f1.4 came into the picture next. As I've mentioned earlier, I originally thought I would be more into landscape and architectural photography, and while that didn't pan out long term, the real reason that I picked up the 16mm was for astrophotography. There's an international dark sky park about an hour from where I live, and I go out there a few times a year to shoot the night sky. I've gotten quite a few shots that I'm pretty proud of. But I don't own an astro tracker, and I shoot on APS-C size sensors. And shooting astrophotography on APS-C without a tracking setup is not really ideal. In fact, some of the astrophotos that I've taken using night sight on my Pixel 7, just mounted on a basic phone tripod, look just as good to me as the ones that I've taken with the Sigma 16mm on my a6400, or even my a6700. Outside of those occasional astro trips, I didn't use the 16mm all that much. In general, I find composing with ultra-wide angles pretty difficult. I don't love the distortion that generally comes with these focal lengths, and I often struggle to create coherent images with them, so the lens just didn't see that much use. Then, in 2023, everything changed. I picked up the Viltrox 75mm f1.2, my first non-Sigma autofocus lens, and it quickly became my favorite lens in the entire kit. The sharpness and clarity on this lens are just incredible. The f1.2 aperture makes for gorgeous subject separation, especially for portrait and product work. It's not flawless, it does have some pretty heavy vignetting, which you can correct with a profile in Lightroom, and it also flares pretty badly in low light if you hit it with a direct point source like a street lamp. And finally, the autofocus can hunt in dim conditions. But those quirks haven't stopped me from loving it. And most importantly, I realized I don't mind the weight. The 75mm is noticeably bigger and heavier than my Sigma primes, but if the 75mm was the only lens on me, it was fine. Which leads me to the first time I really questioned my lens selection. I brought the Sigma 16mm, Sigma 30mm, and the Viltrox 75mm with me on my honeymoon to Norway a few years ago. This ensured great coverage across focal lengths, great image quality, and a terrible experience for my back. Lugging around all three lenses in a backpack was not the greatest experience, and let's just say that airport security were not thrilled with my setup either. That trip was the first time that I started to think seriously about simplifying my kit. I have a trip to Vietnam planned for next year, and this time around, I've made a decision. I am only bringing one lens, and that lens is going to be the Sigma 17 to 40mm f1.8 art lens. Now, you might be wondering, why not just get the Sigma 18 to 50mm f2.8? It's lighter, smaller, cheaper, and it's still pretty good. But here's the thing, I shoot APS-C because it's more affordable, not because I care about weight or compactness. I'm more than happy to carry a heavier lens if it means better image quality. The 17 to 40mm f1.8 art looks like the ideal all-in-one travel lens for my needs. It covers the focal lengths that I use the most, it's supposed to be incredibly sharp, and it's fast enough to handle low light and give me decent subject separation. It's not going to replace everything in my kit, but it could easily become my go-to lens for travel photography and videography. Since my honeymoon, I've picked up two more lenses, the Sigma 56mm f1.4 and the Viltrox 27mm f1.2. I picked up the 56mm because I liked the focal length of my old Minolta Nifty 50s on APS-C, roughly a 75mm full-frame equivalent, and I thought that it would be nice to have a middle ground between the 30mm and the 75mm. But in practice, I almost never use it. The 75mm just looks better in every way. More bokeh, more clarity, more sauce, for the lack of a better word. I know the 17 to 40 doesn't cover the same focal length as the 56mm, but honestly, if I'm shooting portraits, I'm reaching for the 75mm every time anyway. The Viltrox 27mm f1.2 was the real surprise. I first tried it at a Viltrox-sponsored portrait clinic here in the DC area, and I was blown away by how much cleaner and sharper it was compared to my Sigma 30mm. Chromatic aberration was also way more controlled, and the images just had more pop to them. I ended up buying it on sale, and it's quickly become my new everyday walk-around lens. Even though it's much heavier than the 30mm, I don't mind. It still fits in my sling bag or in my camera pouch inside my backpack, and in basically every situation, I would rather have that extra bit of clarity and resolution than save on weight. With all that said, there's still a few things giving me pause. The Sigma 30mm f1.4 has a really interesting and unique focus falloff. It's not as razor sharp or clean as the Viltrox 27mm, but it has this dreamy, almost vintage look that's hard to replicate. Especially for video, it gives a distinctive character that none of my other lenses really match. As for the 16mm, I do worry that I'll miss its f1.4 aperture for astrophotography. The 17 to 40mm is only f1.8, and that might not gather quite enough light, but again, I'm not doing any serious astro work, and my phone takes stunning night sky images at this point, so realistically, I don't think I'll miss it that much. Also, there are definitely two strong arguments in favor of choosing the Sigma 18 to 50mm f2.8 over the 17 to 40mm f1.8 art. The first is size and weight. The 18 to 50 is noticeably more compact and travel-friendly, and it would almost certainly be easier on the motors of my Scorp-C gimbal. With that said, I've done the math. My A6700 with a camera cage and the 17 to 40mm still only comes in at just over a kilogram, well within the Scorp-C's 2.5 kilogram payload limit. Plus, since the 17 to 40mm zooms internally, it should actually perform better on a gimbal than the externally extending 18 to 50mm. In terms of packability, the 17 to 40mm isn't tiny, but I still believe that it'll fit in my sling bag, although I'll admit that's a bit of a calculated risk. The second point in favor of the 18 to 50mm is its incredibly close minimum focus distance, just 4.8 inches compared to 11.1 inches on the 17 to 40. As someone who regularly shoots very small products, such as IEMs, that kind of close-up capability would be very useful, but in the end, while it's a real advantage, I don't think it outweighs the other benefits that I expect to get from the 17 to 40mm. I hope this video has helped you think more critically about your own kit. Gear choices are intensely personal decisions, and they evolve with your style, your travel habits, and your goals. Let me know in the comments if your gear philosophy has changed over time, and whether you prefer zooms, primes, portability, or raw image quality. If you want to see my full review of the Sigma 17 to 40mm f1.8 art lens once I've had time to put it through its paces, please consider subscribing to the channel. Next up will be something completely different, though. I've been testing out the Colorfly CDA-L1 dongle DAC for the past couple of weeks, and I'm excited to share my thoughts, as well as to add it to my ever-expanding dongle DAC database. Thanks for watching until the end of the video. I appreciate it more than you know. Until next time, this is Bedrock Reviews, signing off.